Here is your WESN News on the hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Police probe death of 2-month-old infant in San Fernando. Venezuelan teen found dead in New Grant drain. Manhunt underway for armed suspect who escaped police custody. And internationally, arrests made over Matthew Perry's death. Now for the details. Police are investigating the death of a 2-month-old infant identified as Javion James. Early Wednesday morning, James was rushed to the San Fernando hospital by his parents after they found him unresponsive at home. Despite efforts, he was declared dead upon arrival. Reports indicate there was no visible signs of violence, but the child appeared underweight. A post-mortem has been ordered to determine the cause of death. PC Abdul is leading the investigation. Police are investigating the death of 17-year-old Santiago Claviel, a Venezuelan national living in New Grant. Claviel's body was discovered face down in a drain along Hindustan Road near Grace Anglican Church around 3:35 p.m. on Wednesday. While there were no visible signs of violence, his face was partially submerged in the water, raising suspicions of drowning. A post-mortem has been ordered to confirm the cause of death. Investigations are ongoing, led by PC Maynard. Police are on the hunt for a 20-year-old man who escaped custody while being transported between stations on Wednesday evening. The incident occurred around 5 p.m. on the Western Main Road in Point Cumana when the suspect, handcuffed and in the back of a police vehicle, managed to open the door and flee on foot. He was initially arrested at a party in Chaguaramas on August 11th in connection with multiple shooting investigations. Authorities warn the public that the suspect is considered armed and dangerous. Anyone with information is urged to contact 999-555 Crime Stoppers or 800-TIPS. In international news, arrests have been made over the death of French star Matthew Perry, who was found unresponsive at his Los Angeles home in October. A post-mortem examination found the cause of his death was the acute effects of ketamine, a controlled drug which the recovering addict was taking as part of supervised therapy. LA police opened an investigation in May to determine why Perry, 54, had so much of the drug in his system when he died. On Thursday, 2 law enforcement sources told the BBC's U.S. partner, CBS, that arrests had been made in the investigation. The news was first reported by TMZ. Police and law enforcement officials have not publicly confirmed the reports. Well, that's your news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. My guest on this edition of the program, Ms. Priya Ganesh Nanton. She's a campaigner in the fight against neediness. She's given to finding ways of making life easier for people. That's a career. It's a lifelong preoccupation that she has. She has a new campaign called Hubs of Hope. We're talking with her about that, what it means in terms of reaching out to people who are the most needy in the society. Priya, good to have you, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Andy. Morning.
How are you?
I'm really good. This morning, I'm really, really good. How are you?
Well, I'm pretty good. I'm better now that we're having this discussion, because when I proposed it, you seemed a bit like you weren't sure you want to talk about it. You know, you seem to be, hesitant about it. But as usual, what I've come to know of you, you rise to any occasion. So we're talking about this Hubs of Hope, and I'm looking at some of what it means. There's something you have called Happier Ever After. As a take on your name, let's start with that. Explain what it is.
Okay, so Happier Ever After is my business that I started in the pandemic. I got the name of it's from my name. My name is Priya, Priya Ganesh Nanton. I see you all have changed my name a little bit there.
Yeah.
But so, growing up, I always say this, growing up, little girls especially, we conditioned to believe in the happily ever after. You find your Prince Charming and you live happily ever after. And generally, the romantic love is where we place our the happily ever after is how, I don't know how to express that, but to say this, I'm living my happily ever after, and it doesn't look anything like what I thought it would look like, nothing what the fairy tales tell you it would look like, where, you know, you have your prince and you live in a castle and you live happily ever after. I am raising my own little prince, and we are baking bread together, and we are going on adventures, and I am really enjoying this life. And 20 years ago, I never would have imagined that this would be my life. But it is, and I'm really happy to be here on this journey right now. So that's the name Happily Ever After. It is a fairy tale. It's an unexpected fairy tale.
Yes.
But it's a lovely fairy tale. I love this life that I have now.
Yeah, and you say that you know you love doing these things. Where does that come from?
Such a great question. Such a great question. And I had this conversation, a small conversation with my best friend's teenage daughter, saying that sometimes when, as a child, if you feel lost or you feel helpless or you feel lonely or powerless, two things can happen. You get angry and you want to punish people for getting you in that space, or you decide that you don't want anybody else to feel the way that you felt. And I'm not 100% sure, but I will tell you, Gail Ali Bukas, who is the mother of my heart, I talk about her all the time. Gail Ali Bukas, her superpower was love and feeding people. I think I don't know if I had told you the story about the 2 packs of ramen and 4 hops bread. It was like Jesus with the fish and the bread, where she fed like 8 of us that night with 4 hops bread and 2 packs of ramen. We made corn soup, and it was like 1 tin of corn, 2 packs of ramen, and she fed so many people. And now, Andy, like to be able to go out there and meet with people who really going through it. Some people are still recovering from the pandemic. You know, for some people, they did well in the pandemic, right? Their salaries continued, their expenses dropped, but their income remained the same. And some people did well in the pandemic, but some people struggled, some people suffered, and some people are still trying to recover from the pandemic. And food, in Trinidad, I always say this, I've said this to you before, we cannot starve in this country. We cannot starve. There's food everywhere. But for so many people, access to good, healthy food, you know, like you could buy 4 packs of ramen for $20 in the grocery, but what are you really feeding your child? So for me, giving people good homemade bread, made with love, made by hand, you know, that is for me, that is a joy for me to be able to do, to be able to do that, my initiative. Oh, can I tell you about the name?
Go ahead.
Okay, so Hops of Hope, right?
Yes.
Is a misnomer because it's not really hops.
Well, precisely because I looked at online and I saw some of the loaves that you put out. I mean, they're huge things. But I just want to intervene a little bit to say what you were saying earlier. It reminds me of an elder cousin I have. Her name is, she used to be Ursula Roach. And I have seen her, you know, share 2 sweet biscuits among 6 people. She had that ability to do that, and each of us got a taste of it, and that was part of just her personality. Her, you know, you could do that. What you're saying sounds like that. You know, you stretch resources such that, in some cases, people get filled with the gratitude of being offered something, whatever it is, in whatever amount. And that comes from some kind of a grace that you're bestowed with, that people like you are bestowed with.
So you said that, and I remembered, so I do outreach in the BSM, you know that, right? It's been, you know, what, 8 years now.
Yes.
And my kids are now big. I have some teenagers now. My chocolate is working, you know. And if I have 1 kiss cake, like not even the one with the icing, not even the pack with the 2 in it. If I have 1 kiss cake, we will break that kiss cake, and everybody will get a taste of kiss cake. Another true story.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the same, I mean, I grew up believing where there's room in the heart, there's room in the home. And if it have enough for 1 to eat, it have enough for 2. right? I don't subscribe to this. I don't come from a mental space of less or not enough. All right, I believe in abundance. You know that about me. I believe in abundance. It is enough for everybody.
Well, so you say, let's go back to the point you make about there ought not to be any starvation in this country because there's enough to go around. And I think you hung around some people. I want to come to talking about your friendship with the late Norris Dionarine in a while. You know, I mean, a marketplace was named after him, again, for his advocacy and these things. And I met you through him to some extent, and I met him through you, and so on. We'll get to him in a moment. But let's continue to talk about, you know, how do you find it in you to continue to do this? You say you love to bake bread.
I love it. I love baking. I love the feel of it. And Andy, let me tell you, you know me as an activist. You know me as an office person. I've worked in an office for my whole career has been based behind a desk, working behind a computer. Yeah. And I learned to bake bread as a teenager. I was probably 17 years old when I learned to bake bread. My mother's older sister, Auntie Dulcie, she taught me to bake bread probably in 97 or 98. And I've never been a big baker of anything as an adult. And in the pandemic, and this is the story of how the business started, in the pandemic, I could not do anything outside of my home that I could not do without my 4-year-old being with me. Everything that I did in the pandemic, I did with a 4-year-old at my side. So when I looked at my life, and Auntie Gail's daughter, my cousin Marie, she said, what can you do? You need to look at your life and see what you can monetize. What can you do? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm taking care of a little boy. I'm washing his clothes, I'm washing dishes, and I'm cooking. I'm not going to do any of those things for other people in a pandemic, you know? I'm not washing anybody's clothes in a pandemic. What do I do? And I slept on it. And I realized I was making bread. My recipe makes 2 loaves. And I was keeping one for my home. And I was gifting the other loaf to whoever, or whichever my friends at that time would come and drop off groceries or toiletries or market stuff or whatever, because I did not work at the beginning of the pandemic. My last salary was December 2019. We're in May 2024. So I started that business as a thank you. I started baking as a thank you, and from that the business grew. And I remain so grateful that a skill that I learned as a teenager was able to now come forward in my 40s. I started the business at 40 years old to be able to take care of my son. My son just turned 8 in March. October will be 4 years of this business.
Yeah. What is your sense of I want to stay on that a little bit, that point about people ought not to be without something to eat in Trinidad and Tobago when the day comes? Or what is your sense of the extent of neediness and people who probably go hungry in our country? What is your sense of that? You know, how widespread do you think it is?
It is more widespread than I think we appreciate. And I'll tell you, in the course of my life and my career before becoming a mother, I have always been that person. If I see someone putting back groceries at the cashier, like they're checking up and saying, I say, go ahead and I'll pay the rest. I've always been that person, ever since, right? And now in the pandemic, I became that person I sold some bread. I had to check up how much money I had. I went to the grocery and all the cashiers and all the groceries knew me. I'd be like, okay, don't let it go over 200. Don't let it go over 300. Because groceries are astronomical right now. You could go to the grocery and get a little, not even a little basket. You put 5 things in there, 6 things in there, and you have to pay $200-300. How are people making out? Like, and then especially if you come in, if you backtrack, right? And there are people here, working professionals. You put anything you want in your trolley, and you go and you swipe your card, and you don't remember the next day how much you paid for groceries, you know.
Yeah.
That is the disparity between the haves and the have-nots. There are mothers who have to count, and okay, I can't get cheese today, but I want to get eggs because my kid needs protein. Right? but then pack soup because I don't feel like cooking. I'm exhausted. I've been working all 12 hours a day for all week. You know, so I'm faced with all these different situations, you know, for moms who have multiple kids, working moms, married moms even, and still struggling. We have people with 2 incomes still struggling because their hours have been cut. They spend all the time in traffic, so they have to pay for childcare. There's like, I don't think like the conversation to have about how the struggle of feeding children is a conversation, is a small conversation. Because in a time where kids are we have this record number of pediatric cancer patients in this country right now. And you have to ask yourself, what are we feeding our children, right? That is a whole different conversation. So, but right now, in trying to feed children proper food and the cost of vegetables, the cost of fruits, it's easier. You could spend $20 and get a big bag of snacks, you know. Nutritional and 20, but what's the cost of bananas? What's the cost of apples? What's the cost of Portugal? What's the cost of oranges? $5 for orange. What we doing right now?
What?
And you know, going back to my bread, right? Sneaking in 2 carrots into a loaf of bread, half a cabbage, pimento to get my child to eat vegetables in the pandemic, right? A fussy eater, trying to get him to eat. Now he eats everything. And I don't make bread that my kid wouldn't eat. I would never make a loaf of bread that I wouldn't feed to my child. And to see parents now grateful to have a healthy loaf of bread. I don't put preservatives in the bread. But Andy, I want to tell you how I got the name Hops of Hope.
Yes, go ahead, yes.
Right, so it's a misnomer. So it's not hops, it's rolls, right?
Right.
So
and loaves, yes. Rolls and loaves, yes.
Amplia about is the loaves, and Hops of Hope is something that we partnered. Well, different people came together, and we have baked between 100 to 200 pounds of bread per month for 2 years at the Chimuk Bakery in Port of Spain. They are an amazing group of people. Natalie Phillips is an amazing, amazing person. The whole team at Chimuk, the staff at Chimuk, they are the best set of people that you could meet, right? So we run that off, and we don't sell the hops. I think you know that. I don't sell hops. So the premise of it is this. I have a lot of friends who join the gym and stop eating carbs, right? They still want to support the business. They still want to support me, because for every loaf of bread that I sell, I feed my child, right? I can buy groceries. That's how my business works. It's that simple. But with the hops, people who want to support but don't eat bread, they say, okay, I'm going to buy a loaf of bread. I'm going to buy a bag of hops, and you can give it to a family in need. You can give it to a single parent home. You can give it to someone in transition who lost their job during the pandemic. I give hops to the shelter in Port of Spain, to the halfway house in Gasparilla, to Serenity Place, which is the rehab down in Cochrane, close to me here in Point Fortin. Well, I give my kids in the Betham. All the time they get, so I stagger it. So not everybody gets every time, but my kids in the Betham get every single time, and I just give it to them. And with the Hops of Hope, a friend asked me 2 years ago, Priya, do you make hot cross buns? And I said, no, because only if you want them to be weapons. My sweet dough is not anything that I would feed anyone. And so that's where the idea of the little round something came up. We started around April, around Easter. And I spoke with Natalie about it at Chimuk Bakery. And I said I wanted to do a hops distribution. And we pay for the ingredients. That's been our agreement for the past 2 years. I pay her for all the ingredients. All my friends, we put up, and we pay for the flour, the sugar, the salt, the fat, whatever, the oats, whatever we need to put in. We pay for the ingredients, and we make it and we distribute. So the Hops of Hope. So Hops of Hope, the actual trigger for starting the initiative, right? There was a couple in Princestown
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the story. There was a couple in Princestown who committed suicide together. And they left their 2 little children. And I'm still taken aback by that. Like, how hopeless is your situation that you look at all the options in front of you and decide that suicide is the best option? And I thought to myself, people are really, really struggling. And I mean, I was in a terrible situation. I have no income. I can't work. My little boy is with me all the time. I can't do any kind of work outside of the home without my son. It was at a time where children weren't even allowed in public spaces, public offices, and this kind of thing. So what was I supposed to do? And I reached out and I started this initiative, and I thought to myself, you know, we really, Andy, as a people, as Trinidadians, the same way that we could hug up and love up for Carnival and have all this, exude all this love out into the world, we have to live like that all the time and be our brothers and sisters' keeper, because people are struggling right now.
All right, I want to go back to what you said about, you know, how you worked behind the desk for some time, because we were, in daily communication when you worked with the great minister.
The great minister Vasant Bharat.
Vasant Bharat for a while.
I love that man.
When I was reporting to him at that time, working in the administration. But you don't get the, but I mean you still you were doing this stuff on the side of that, or putting equal time and effort into that as well as doing the job you were doing. How do you balance that? How did you balance that?
I have no idea, and I don't. So like right now, exhaustion is my state of being. I am a mother, first and foremost, full-time. That's me. Everything I do revolves around Raiden. I put all my energy into him, and you know how much energy I have, because I'm accustomed doing so many things for so many people and trying to fill that gap. And now he gets all of me, and trust me, Andy, that little boy, whew, it's a lot. So being a mother is first and foremost for me, and in showing him the privilege that we have to live in Trinidad, the privilege that he has being my son, having all these aunties and uncles and all these people who love him, all these organizations that I have worked with over the years, and if I tell you, in that pandemic, people reached out to me, Priya, are you okay? Are you working? Do you need anything? People who I hadn't heard of in years came to my home. My kid was 4 years old.
Yeah, and there's some people who engage in this because they feel it's worthwhile to do these things, but then sometimes when they approach others for help, they're very apologetic. You just matter of fact, in way in which you do this thing smoothly, how you approach people and why you approach them and so on. It comes from somewhere that is special.
Thank you. I feel the love, Andy. But yeah, I think you know that about me. If it takes me, if I have to ask 20 times to get one yes, I'm asking 20 times. Because when I make up my mind, that's it.
Yeah. And talk about how the arrangement with Chimooks came about. Was it? I'm just asking the question sort of rhetorically, because I don't think it was difficult to approach them and to do this. Yeah.
Chimook Bakery is a, I don't know, 200-year-old structure, 100-year-old business. I don't know. They've been around forever. Yeah. They are part of the landscape of Trinidad and Tobago. And when the founding, I guess, father, Natalie's daddy, he always supported small business, and he always supported people. Yeah. So, so to just come in, I'm giving away the bread, right? We're giving away the bread. So once we get enough money, we pay for the flour, we pay for the ingredients, we give away the bread. That's what we're doing. And just to make a point, like, there's no sponsorship here, and we're not looking to be you know, to have Bmobile sponsorship and Digicel sponsorship. What we're looking for is for the individuals at these companies, at every company, individuals, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, not nationals of Trinidad and Tobago, people who are resident here, who are moved by the struggle and suffering of others, to get involved. This is an individual, this is individual based. So not every month, some months we don't, some months we have to come out of pocket, some months we have to owe for the flour. Right? But we do it, and Chimuk has continued to be absolutely fantastic. And I remain so grateful. Natalie is like my big sister. I've known her for a long time, you know, and she believes in this project. The staff at Chimuk have been really, I tell you, I give them, they all get bread. So that's, they enjoy the bread, they understand the mission behind the bread. So yeah, I mean, I remain very, very grateful to them.
Do you have a sort of next level to go, or, you know, next center of activity, remaining with who you are, finding ways to bring relief and sustenance to some of us?
I mean, yes. And I'm just sharing it here. This is what I've been playing with in my mind. So food is very important to me. I think food, nobody should have to beg for food. I think that people should be able to feed their family with dignity. And I don't think that anybody asking for food should be refused. If you can't feed somebody, feed them. Don't judge them, don't ask questions. If somebody asks you for food, feed them, right? And I feel that now, after the pandemic, after everything that's happened and life adjustments that so many people have had to make, mental and emotional health remains a real, like, people are struggling. And right now I'm reaching out to my friends to try and make up money for a single mom. She needs to talk to somebody. She needs to talk to somebody. People are struggling. And I reached out to a couple of friends and I said, you know what we should do? Let's go Toko. Let's go Toko and unplug and recharge and reconnect with each other and have some conversations in this day and age with social media and likes and scrolling. When is the last time you really sat, had a cup of coffee, had a cup of tea, you know, and listened to the birds and had a conversation? How are you? When is the last time you asked somebody, how are you doing? When is the last time somebody asked you, how are you doing? How's your head? How's your heart? What's going on? And I feel that that is my next mission going forward, to really allow myself to give, to put into this life what I really wanted for myself in the pandemic, which was, you know, a sounding board. My friends held me and held me tightly. Yeah? So mental health is important. I mean, food is important. Food is always important. Yeah, but mental health and emotional well-being, absolutely, I think we need to give that priority.
Yeah. So you're planning what other people will refer to as a retreat to sort of...
Yeah, I want to do one for some single moms. I have some single moms who are really, really struggling. And as a single mom myself, I have a real beautiful support system. It's not easy. It's physically exhausting because it's physically only me. But, you know, Raiden gets books and, you know, he has bigger cousins who, we get jeans, we get shoes, you know, so we are in the middle of a line. So things come down to us and then it goes down to the next kid in line. So I don't have that worry in my mind about how am I going to clothe my child, or he needs a new pair of sneakers. He's 8 now. I just ask my friends who have 10-year-old kids, 9-year-old kids, listen, you know. But right now, a retreat for a couple of moms who've been really, really going through it, whose tribe is a little limited, whose community is a little limited. They can't take a vacation. You know, I know people who they fly out every time school closes. You know, their kids have so much stamps in their passports. And then I have friends who can't even take a staycation. They can't even go to Mayaro for a night. And that's what I want to do. I want I want to give some moms and some kids, let's go watch some turtles.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm told we have about 2 minutes left, and I wanted to just go back to Norris Junior for that time. So you're driving along the highway and seeing this name on the marketplace in Mokoya. Just talk a little bit about how that came about and how his name and his activism deserves to be preserved.
Andy, you said we have 2 minutes. You're going to make me cry at the end, man. His sister just passed away, you know.
I didn't know that.
And she was like Raiden's grandma. So I asked all my young people, everybody, like, do you know who's Norris Jr., right? Do you know who the market is named for? And I speak about him. You know, Raiden speaks about him. Raiden has never met him. This year is, how many years? 12 years?
Since he died.
Yeah. I met with Makemba. You know Makemba Kunle at Studio 66?
Of course.
Yes, and we were talking about it. He was there for the launch when we did the name. You know, Attila Springer was one of the people who were instrumental in that. The National Food Crop Farmers, Glenn Ramjag, they were instrumental in that, in saying, you know, we wrote to the minister at the time, and Vasant was the minister at the time, and he granted that, Norris Junior, the Norris Junior wholesale market. And, you know, I was talking to Roma Price, who now runs the Agro-Tourism Center up in Toko, and just about the heroes. You know, every generation has its heroes. And if we don't talk about our generation's heroes to this generation, then how are they remembered? People live on when we speak about them, Norris Jr. and Michael Alves. Like, there have been so many lovely, amazing people who have given of themselves to this country, you know? And even though we don't always speak of them, it doesn't diminish that their contribution is, they've made an indelible mark. It's there.
Yeah, I remember when he died. He died the morning after he was featured on TV trying to part a fight with people somewhere up in the east, and yeah, before you knew it, so he went to sleep and died in his sleep. And yeah, you talk about Attila Springer at the funeral in Quebec, and she had to be moved away from the service itself because she was shouting food security for Norris. I'll never forget it.
He was a really, you know, he was a different human. Eh? He had such a huge heart, a huge love for this country, and he had such a fierce, amazing spirit that if I could do something to make people's life better, to improve the lives of the farmers, I'm going to.
Yeah,
and
all right.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to have to plan a part 2 of this, because this is where we have to leave it. Priya Ganesnan. Thank you very much.
We still have to talk about the anniversary, Andy.
Yeah, we will come to that.
2 years.
Yes. All right. We'll mention it. So when it's coming up.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. Thanks for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. See you soon.
Okay, take care, Andy. Bye-bye.
All right. This has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
WESN.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Young at heart, purpose-driven, patriot even. When you like to party, but are still passionate about discussing important issues, the only place where your needs will be met is WESN Content Capital.
The war in Ukraine did not start with Russia's full-scale invasion in February of 2022. In reality, it began 10 years ago, in 2014. In February, protests in Kyiv toppled the pro-Russian government. Russia then seized Crimea from Ukraine and sent special forces into the eastern Donbas region to stoke a separatist rebellion there. And there, the Ukrainians fought back. The first flashpoint, the town of Sloviansk. Paramilitaries led by a Russian sometime FSB officer, Igor Gerkin, seized administrative buildings in Sloviansk on the 12th of April and appointed a local man, Vyacheslav Ponomaryov, as a people's mayor. Ukraine's military operation to oust them got off to a spluttering start, but the armed forces were soon bolstered by newly formed volunteer battalions who took the fight to Sloviansk. Ponomaryov called on Putin for help.
We are asking for help. If you can't send in peacekeeping troops, help by sending food, weapons, help however you can.
Well, since then, it's been repeatedly shown that Russia wasn't just helping, but was the instigator of the separatist People's Republic in Donbas. Nevertheless, Ukraine regained control of Sloviansk on the 5th of July, though much of the rest of the Donbas remained under de facto Russian occupation. Today, Sloviansk in the Kremlin sights once again. Russia's stated aim is to occupy the whole region, and after long battles, its forces have taken key towns such as Bakhmut and Avdiivka, razing them to the ground in the process. Could the same fate await Sloviansk? Well, Gulliver Cragg revisits Sloviansk for France 24.
Explosions on the front line can be seen from the hills above Sloviansk every day. Yet, also every day, the intercity train from Kiev rolls in right on time. Svetlana is traveling from Germany, where she's been living as a refugee for the past 2 years.
It took 32 hours just to get to Kyiv, but I'm more than happy to make the journey if it means I can visit my home.
Most of all, she's hoping to see her son, Oleksiy, who's fighting around 80 kilometers south of Sloviansk.
Will you be able to come? I asked him. He said, I don't know, and that's it. Oh, what a cutie.
She gets chatting to Victoria, who's on her way to see her husband, who took up arms when Russia attacked Kyiv region in 2022. Their son, Misha, was 3 months old at the time.
He waits on every phone call from his dad. He's always picking up the phone and saying, Papa, Papa, hello, Papa.
Victoria was still a child herself when the war started, with the 3-month occupation of Sloviansk by a Russian-led commando. But Svetlana remembers all too well.
It was terrifying. But then the Ukrainian army chased those guys out of our city, and they went to Donetsk. And after that, somehow it didn't feel so much like there was a war going on. But in 2022, when they started shelling Sloviansk again, that's when I understood that the situation was serious, and I needed to leave.
This is her second visit home since then. The first time, Oleksiy didn't get any leave.
Так ты приедешь все-таки. Ну, приезжай, сынок, я рада дуже. Я чувствовала, что ты приедешь. Чувствовала. Давай.
So it's an old friend who meets Svetlana off the train.
А где чемодан?
They go to wait for Oleksiy.
Алёшка. Сынок.
Та що ти плачеш?
Рада тебе бачити.
It's Orthodox Easter Sunday. But the meeting is not as joyous as Svetlana had hoped. Fresh from the front, Oleksiy is exhausted.
I'm just not used to being around people anymore.
Yes. It's like you always say, we're living in different worlds. Of course, we can't understand what they're going through out there.
It's better if you never know.
The next day, Oleksiy is less tired, but still in a somber mood.
So nice and pleasant here. And so many children came back.
That's bad. At any moment, everything could change.
It's still a pleasant walk.
It's pleasant, of course, but more pleasant is when you're protected by solid concrete.
You're right, my son.
Sloviansk has been shelled repeatedly since 2022, but many fear the worst is yet to come. Today's full-on Russian offensive on the Donbass region is not like in 2014, when the invaders tried to frame it as a popular uprising and recruited locals to their cause.
Most of the guys who took up arms were unemployed.
Bums.
Though in fact, lots of people believed in it because no one knew who was right and who was wrong.
Later, Oleksiy gives me the number of a childhood friend of his who joined the so-called separatist rebellion. He wishes to remain anonymous, but says he had attended counter-protests in support of Ukraine's pro-Russian government before it was toppled.
Then, one morning, I get a phone call saying they've taken the police station. We went down there, and already there were barricades and piles of tires. But who seized the police station? Not people from Slavyansk, some Ukrainians, but mostly Russians. They started handing out weapons, and of course we were all pumped up on adrenaline. Plus everyone thought it would be like with Crimea. The little green men had come, everyone would clap, and it would be a done deal. But that's not how things went at all.
The Russian-led paramilitaries had also seized the town hall, where Denis Behunov worked in the press office at the time. He stopped going to work, but after a few days, he says, the occupiers told him to come back, to make things seem normal.
I came here and tried to open my office, but I could hear something. The door was locked, but I could hear that someone was in there. And when I started to open the door, this guy who was standing here with a machine gun saw me and starts running towards me. So I understood that something was up. And he's like, "What are you breaking in on the prisoners for?" And I understood then that they were holding hostages in the town hall. So I said, "Oh, it's my office, but if I just didn't know that there are prisoners there, and, you know..."
Meanwhile, downstairs, daily press conferences sought to present the whole situation as a grassroots separatist uprising. Many Ukrainians are bitter at the way international media apparently believed that myth.
What I feel is not so much anger as sadness and disappointment, because the circumstances were such that had I been in the place of those Western journalists, I would also probably have not understood what was going on, not knowing the context. I really couldn't, because I understood that if I said anything, I would immediately end up in the same place as those hostages that I heard in my office.
Numerous prisoners were executed. Some for pro-Ukrainian views, others for petty crimes. Among the victims was Maria Pichko's son, also called Alexei.
The accusation was apparently that he broke into a house and stole a shirt and some trousers, and they sentenced him to death.
Maria says she had a printed copy of the death sentence, but can't find it, or the last letter Alexei wrote her.
I used to always carry it with me, but now I don't know where I've put it. My head is in such a mess these days. It was just a little note on a scrap of paper, and he wrote, "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm sorry for everything. Please forgive me, and goodbye. I'm going to be shot."
Since then, Maria has also lost a grandson and a son-in-law killed in action. This cemetery is about 22 kilometers from the front line.
We've been afraid to come up and tidy up here lately. You never know when there might be a shelling.
Maria says she came to realize only gradually who was to blame for her family's tragedy.
I even wrote to Putin about it. I didn't know then what Russia was up to. It's actually genocide, and it's all the fault of Putin and his cronies.
But back in 2014, as Ukraine's military fought to regain control of Slavyansk, many residents held Kiev responsible and accused the Ukrainian army of shelling civilian buildings. Ukraine said it was the Russian side doing that on purpose to stir up anti-Ukrainian feeling. This local doctor, who's now a Ukrainian army medic, admits that that is hard to prove.
Often they'd shoot from the edge of town from a direction that could plausibly have come from Ukrainians stationed further away. So to say for sure who did it is not possible, because the trajectories were the same. But here, there were no Ukrainian forces where the strike came from. The mortar flew in that direction, Ukrainian forces were stationed over there, on Karachun Hill, and over there.
But the occupiers also drew Ukrainian fire on the city with their artillery, he says.
They could easily take 3 or 4 shots and move on before the Ukrainians managed to fire back. And then they would present it as if the Ukrainian army was targeting the city.
Russian TV channels had teams all over the region pushing a narrative of Ukrainian nationalists bent on killing civilians in Donbass.
But those channels accurately showed which places had been damaged. Lots and lots of people watched them. Did it have an influence? I guess so. I guess on me too. But it's hard to assess, you understand? Because I've changed.
Sloviansk itself has changed.
In July 2014, when this northern part of Donetsk region was liberated, but the southeastern part of it remained under the control of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, we thought that we might be able to show that the Ukrainian project was better than Russia's Russian world.
Denise became one of the leaders of a burgeoning pro-Ukrainian civil society with a hub in this former printworks.
The various Western foundations that came helped us create centers of civic activism. And thanks to that, the proportion of people who felt a sense of belonging to Ukraine, to Kyiv, increased. And then after the full-scale invasion of 2022, that dynamic got much stronger. Oh, sorry, I've got to go. Our meeting is starting.
Today, Denise's meetings are mostly online. Other activists have left town for security reasons.
We'd done pretty much everything. We'd established normal relations between society and the authorities, which weren't all closed off anymore. But then the war changed everything, and now, as you see, it's so empty here.
One community center in the town is still operational.
Тепер заливаємо яйце, а потім обжигаємо і проявляємо його.
This technique is from a lady called Zoriana Dzeba, who teaches Ukrainian traditional crafts. We've got a group online. It's called Park Maria, which means dream. We call ourselves dreamers.
The Park Maria is an actual park, revitalized in 2014 by Yevhenia and other volunteers. Denise has arranged to meet her here.
Nice to see you. Hi. Today you can congratulate us. We just completed a first aid course.
Fantastic. Well done. Actually, I've hurt my thumb. Maybe you can help.
What he really wants her help with, though, is with his project for a new Ukrainian cultural council in Sloviansk.
I think you could be a great generator of ideas, and it would strengthen the cooperation between civil society and the military administration.
Who else will be on it?
Well, apart from you and me, there's pretty much no one else in town.
Yevhenia fled Sloviansk during the 2014 occupation, but returned that summer full of ideas to make the city better.
People were very motivated because they came back after evacuation and understood that they really like their town. And when you love something, you want to change something in that space.
We had so many celebrations here. So many people came.
But Olha is just visiting today. She already evacuated from Sloviansk and lives in central Ukraine. Denise and Yevhenia both admit that they may have to leave too if the Russian army gets much closer. They try not to think about it too much.
Can we change the situation? No, but life goes on. What can you do? Life can't just be all about suffering. We can't just sit here and suffer.
Yet in front of the town hall, the row of tributes to local men killed in action keeps on growing.
This was the son of a friend of mine. I knew him well. Rest in peace, Yura.
Gulliver Crank revisiting Sloviansk for France 24. Well, that's all from this week's edition. You can catch it in the previous editions as well on our website at france24.com. More news in a moment. Thanks for watching.
In 2002, the Indian state of Gujarat erupted into religious violence, with anti-Muslim riots after a train carrying Hindu pilgrims burned to the ground. At the time, the governor of Gujarat was Narendra Modi.
Mr. Jaffrey came out and told the crowd, "You can kill me, but please spare the children and women." But the rioters did not listen. To save us, Mr. Jaffrey called Modi, all the leaders, all the ministers.
In this election year, against a backdrop of Hindu nationalism, the ghosts of the past are re-emerging.
It's a big scar in the Indian history. They can pretend that they're forgetting, they can pretend that it never happened, they can never erase it.
The 2002 Gujarat riots revisited on France 24 and France24.com.
WESN.
Here is your WESN News on the hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Police probe death of 2-month-old infant in San Fernando. Venezuelan teen found dead in New Grant drain. Manhunt underway for armed suspect who escaped police custody. And internationally, arrests made over Matthew Perry's death. Now for the details. Police are investigating the death of a 2-month-old infant identified as Javion James. Early Wednesday morning, James was rushed to the San Fernando hospital by his parents after they found him unresponsive at home. Despite efforts, he was declared dead upon arrival. Reports indicate there was no visible signs of violence, but the child appeared underweight. A post-mortem has been ordered to determine the cause of death. PC Abdul is leading the investigation. Police are investigating the death of 17-year-old Santiago Claviel, a Venezuelan national living in New Grant. Claviel's body was discovered face down in a drain along Hindustan Road near Grace Anglican Church around 3:35 p.m. on Wednesday. While there were no visible signs of violence, his face was partially submerged in the water, raising suspicions of drowning. A post-mortem has been ordered to confirm the cause of death. Investigations are ongoing, led by PC Maynard. Police are on the hunt for a 20-year-old man who escaped custody while being transported between stations on Wednesday evening. The incident occurred around 5 p.m. on the Western Main Road in Point Cumana when the suspect, handcuffed and in the back of a police vehicle, managed to open the door and flee on foot. He was initially arrested at a party in Chaguaramas on August 11th in connection with multiple shooting investigations. Authorities warn the public that the suspect is considered armed and dangerous. Anyone with information is urged to contact 999-555 Crime Stoppers or 800-TIPS. In international news, arrests have been made over the death of Friends star Matthew Perry, who was found unresponsive at his Los Angeles home in October. A post-mortem examination found the cause of his death was the acute effects of ketamine, a controlled drug which the recovering addict was taking as part of supervised therapy. LA police opened an investigation in May to determine why Perry, 54, had so much of the drug in his system when he died. On Thursday, 2 law enforcement sources told the BBC's U.S. partner, CBS, that arrests had been made in the investigation. The news was first reported by TMZ. Police and law enforcement officials have not publicly confirmed the reports. Well, that's your news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi Macnish. Thanks for watching.
WESN. WESN.
Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to Breakthrough. So good to be here. Are you okay, Sean? Okay. All right. One of those days.
It's one of those days.
No problem.
Under the weather. Hopefully it's not COVID or dengue.
Why did you all seat me next to this man? Anyway.
You chose to be here. You chose to be here.
Okay. And with that being said, the maybe infectious man right next to me, hopefully not. I just think the Sahara dust is punching you in the face today.
Nah.
I think that's the case.
Nah.
I think that's the case. We're not going to mention the swarm of mosquitoes.
I mean, if you want to, ignorance is bliss.
Okay, and in my ignorance.
Not something I should say on my other show, folks, but we'll get away with it here on Breakthrough somehow.
Shawn Michael Small, a man with no boundaries and no borders. But anyway, speaking of borders, the conversation that we have in store for you all is quite interesting. So we have with us musician and conductor, internationally qualified and acclaimed musician and conductor, somebody who I am personally very proud of, Andrew Samuel. Good morning, Andrew.
Hi, good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. So you're from Trinidad. You did your bachelor's in music at the UE Department of Creative and Festival Arts, right? We were only like a couple years or a year or two apart. And you went on to further your studies abroad. Tell us about that journey a little bit.
Well, yeah, you covered the initial part of it. So I did the bachelor's at UE, and in the final year, I was wondering what I'm going to do after I graduated. And I spoke to Mr. Murray, who was then the head of the department, and he was suggesting possibly looking into graduate degree programs. And I knew that he went to Temple, so I considered it. And the piano programs that Temple had, they had solo piano, but then they also had a collab piano, which gave you the opportunity to either work with instrumentalists or singers. And at that time, I was doing a lot of vocal accompanying. I was doing work with Lydians. I did a couple sessions with the Love Movement. I did individual freelance work with singers on the island. So I thought, might as well do the focus that gives me the opportunity to work with singers, because if, you know, it's a viable career opportunity, it's quite lucrative, and then I didn't know, but I'm really grateful now that when I actually did come to the US to do the Masters in Collab Piano and Opera Coaching, it gave me the option to really immerse myself in opera, which came with diction coaching, studies in how to be a rehearsal pianist for operatic productions, and then midway through the Masters as well too, I fell in love with conducting, and so I did conducting studies, opera conducting studies. I even did a little bit of choral conducting, just to try to test the waters as much as possible. And yeah, so I did the collab piano degree at Temple here in Philadelphia, which was 2 years, and then after that I applied for work authorization. They call it OPT. So I got that. I worked for a year as a pianist and as a freelance conductor as well. I'm towards the end of that year now, and then I prepare to go off to Maryland in the fall to do my doctorate in conducting at the University of Maryland. So that's where I'm at now.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Samuel, some might say, you know, you have gone abroad, taken your skills and flew away, literally, on a jet plane. Don't know when you'll be back again. Some might say you have left your country behind, you have betrayed us. But the flip side of that is you are looking to have a career in a field that, well, first of all, you're looking at opportunities, and artistic opportunities, they're not as easy. It's not as though you could just be an entrepreneur and say, I'm going to be a musician. That is a highly contested field. But you're also looking at something very specialized as well, to some extent anyway. And these are not necessarily opportunities that you're going to find here. What does it mean to you to, first of all, be able to just, you know, to follow this path that you might not have even necessarily known was available to you when you started with your bachelor's however many years before?
That's a good question, and I think the answer to that question is connected to when I decided to go into music full-time at the very beginning, because my initial plan before even doing the bachelor's at UE was to study what might be considered a safer route of, for a career. I was planning to do like accounting and business stuff, and you know, I think the work opportunities in that route is a bit easier. But then I reached a point in Form 6 at St. George's College where I was like, no, I spent my days thinking about music, and at that point, you know, like really focusing so much on playing the piano. That one day I had a conversation with my mom, and I told her, you know, I want to go into music full time. And this is all tied to my religious belief in my family that when God has a specific plan for you, you know, you want to try to be sensitive and go along with it. So I think the opportunities to study music now and to do piano and coming to the States, and because as you rightly said, it's very difficult now as a musician to get a lot of work opportunities, even in the US. More so as a conductor, because I think it's easier to, if you're a pianist, to get an instrument and to get like work opportunities in a church or a synagogue, or even with singers or musical theater productions, but no one is like really handing you an orchestra to conduct. But that being said, because I was, at that point in time, we believed that this was the plan that God had for us and for me to do the master's and then come to the States and study. It's not that opportunities just kind of fell in my lap, but I followed a specific trajectory that, in which case I prepared myself for the opportunities that God had for me. So one way is that coming to do the master's at Temple, I got into contact by chance with some friends. I was there, for instance, a really hardcore example is I was the rehearsal pianist for the choral conducting seminar at Temple because I really wanted to immerse myself in conducting. And by chance, one of the professor announced there was this reading orchestra that meets every week and encouraging the choral conductors to go. And I was really interested, so I went. And then again, I met the director of the orchestra. We spoke, we became really good friends, and I really started to conduct. I got the position of vice president of the orchestra the next year. And through him, he sent me on the last day of the apprenticeship the opportunity to get the Philadelphia Ballet conducting apprenticeship. And that, again, it was not a planned thing. It came through the grapevine. And in my opinion, I think all of that came from being sensitive to, well, God wants me to do this degree, come here. And the reason why I say it's God as well too is I got the flight to come to do the master's at a time when flight was closing in Trinidad. It was during the height of the COVID season. And my initial flight got canceled, and right before the date was going to close for me to leave, I got another flight, and then I came, as you said, on a jet, not literally a jet, but I came on a plane and I started the degree. So that's a very long-winded way of saying I think when God has a plan for you, it might seem difficult on a very practical level, but it somehow works out. It works out, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's really, I can't help but feel somewhat inspired by your story because in many ways, the initial plan was to do the master's, and then things just sort of, I know you won't say, but I will say, things just kind of fell into place.
Accelerated.
Right? Accelerated.
Because it sounds like I'm in a similar situation. You kind of got the job you was getting education for in the first place, but you didn't necessarily finish the education when you got the job.
No.
Right. And so what are some of the, so I guess it'll be fair to say you were focused on the one thing. And because you're so focused on the one thing and you're focused on learning, and to quote you just now, you said immerse yourself into the thing, because conducting was a very new thing for you, right? You'd done piano for a very, very long time, right? Yeah. And it wasn't something that you picked up on, but it was something that you're definitely interested in. And there's a certain sense of humility and a certain sense of innocence that someone has to have in order to fully, when you're willing to fully immerse yourself into something that is very, very new, right? What are some of the key things that you would have learned along those journeys? Because obviously you would know people down here, you would have met people abroad, and you would have talked and compared notes and people's journeys. But in your own experience, what are some of the things that you learned?
That's a great question, because it took me a long time to be bold enough to say that I want to go into conducting. As you said, for years I was a pianist, and I was well enough on the instrument to be able to get by working with singers to have a career. But then, I reached a point where I couldn't think about anything but not only just the act of moving my hand, but the symphonic repertoire. And the nice thing about being in the US is that there are